It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Robert Convissar, DDS, FAGD, has been a pioneer in laser dentistry. He was one of the very first dentists to incorporate lasers into general practice and has written numerous textbooks and peer-reviewed papers on the subject. He has seen and heard it all and works diligently to convey his knowledge while dispelling the myths from the true benefits. When it comes to training and certification, Dr. Convissar recognizes that knowledge and proper training will build the confidence required to allow you and your staff to incorporate lasers effectively into your practice and use them to their fullest capacity. Dr. Convissar has lectured at virtually every large dental meeting multiple times and 6 years in a row for the ADA. He has circumnavigated the globe 3 times as a lecturer. He is the only laser lecturer to have been named one of the top 100 leaders in CE by Dentistry Today 12 times in a row from 2005 to 16. He's one of the only dentists in the 60-year history of the Dental Clinics North America series of textbooks to have been asked to author the same topic, laser dentistry, twice, October 2000 and 2004. Besides the 2 DCNA textbooks, Quintessence published his 3rd textbook, Atlas of Laser Applications in Dentistry, in 2007, translated into Greek as well. His 4th textbook on laser dentistry, Principles and Practice of Laser Dentistry, was published by Saunders Mosby Elsevier and translated into Spanish and Portuguese and Mandarin. His 5th book, Handbook of Infant Tongue Ties and Lip Tie Laser Phrenectomies, was recently published. He has written over a dozen peer-reviewed publications on laser dentistry. And I'm so excited to get you on the show today because you've been a townie since 2002, and I'm starting to get emails from very serious people that maybe the high-speed handpiece is going to be harmed by the coronavirus. I've already had emails from several manufacturers saying is the coronavirus that the high-speed and the hygienist slow speed is a miniature jet engine for creating an aerosol that this because when you walk into a dental office, you always smell that smell. And they were saying that the worst places was dental offices. Do you agree with any of that, or is that just crazy talk?
Absolutely. We have an aerosol produced whenever we put a burr onto a tooth. We have an aerosol produced whenever we put a cavitron onto a tooth, and it's the virus particles that spread through these aerosols. So we've got a serious problem here. If we're working on a patient that is asymptomatic but carries it, we could all be inhaling that with those aerosols. So we've got to make sure we're wearing an N95 respirator, or at the very least, a level 3 mask.
So you're actually in one of the worst spots right now. You're in Manhattan. You are downtown. You are in New York, zip code 1003. What is the situation today for COVID-19 in the great city of New York?
New York is a ghost town. The governor has closed everything down. There are no dental offices that are allowed to be open except for emergencies only. And the Dental Society of the State of New York has given a list of what specific emergencies are, infections, pain, things like that, but unable to see hygiene patients, unable to do routine fillings or anything else.
So what is your thoughts on this? I mean, where are we at? Do you think the dentists are going to be closed in New York City? This is March 23rd. How long has he said he's closing it down for?
He hasn't said, but we're probably looking at another 2 to 3 weeks, and that's just conjecture on my part. That's just something I'm hoping it'll be no more than 3 weeks. If it is, the profession in New York State is going to have a serious problem.
And what do you mean by that? You mean dentists running out of cash, or what? Running
out of cash. If we're not producing anything, our cash inflow is down to 0, and we've still got our bills to pay. Many of my colleagues have fired their entire staffs, told the staffs to go onto unemployment insurance. They're trying to make arrangements with their landlords so that they can pay their rent a little bit at a time, or maybe get a rent-free month or so. But things are not great here in New York.
What percent of the dentists that are fine and have a savings to take them, say, 90 days. Could pay all their bills for 3 months and just have a long extended vacation.
Well, I believe most of my friends and colleagues, and myself included, have enough cash flow for 90 days or so, but we're very, very concerned about our staffs. We're very concerned about our patients. We're very concerned about a whole bunch of things, and we really don't have any answers. This is an open-ended problem, and I don't know where the light is at the end of the tunnel, how far away the light is.
These are truly strange times. You've written so many books. I mean, you've written 5. I mean, Principles and Practice of Laser Dentistry, I mean, on Amazon. Atlas of Laser Applications in Dentistry. Principles of Practice of Laser Dentistry. I mean, it's just amazing. Are you brand specific, or are you brand agnostic? Or tell us what your preferred laser protocol is and what you do with it.
I am brand agnostic. I try to avoid as much as possible promoting or talking about any specific brands. That's how I keep my sanity. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of hype out there. There are a lot of units that are overhyped and underperform. And I give 2 seminars a month. I've given close to 400 seminars, and you have no idea how many dentists come to the seminars. I'll ask them, how many people have a laser? Most of the people will raise their hands. And then I'll ask them, how many of you use it? And 75% of them will say, well, I bought it about 2-3 years ago, and it's sitting in the closet, and the box still isn't opened. And that's a disgrace.
Who is how are the dental laser companies doing with this pandemic? I imagine they're not selling anything right now.
I don't think any capital equipment is selling. I've spoken to 1 or 2 people from some dental supply companies and laser companies that I'm friendly with, and they're telling me they have orders for equipment that have been canceled. So it's not just a problem for dentists. Our suppliers, our manufacturers, they're getting hit hard as well.
Have you heard from any of those? I mean, have any of them talked to you so far?
Yeah, they've spoken to me, and they've got cash flow problems as well. They purchased the units from their manufacturers, and they're not selling them. So they've got a warehouse full of devices, and people aren't buying them. People are canceling their orders, but they've got to pay the manufacturer. So it's a lousy situation.
Now, is Convergent, are they publicly traded?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure.
That is just crazy times. So what laser are you using, and what procedures are you using it for?
Well, I'm a little bit unusual because I've been doing this for 30 years. I have almost a dozen lasers in my office. Haven't bought them all. Most of them have been given to me by various companies that say, here, use the laser, shoot some videos, shoot some slides, and talk nice about my product. So I've accumulated a bunch of diodes, erbiums, CO2s, Nd.YAGs. I've got just about everything, and of course PBMs as well. And I do just about everything I can do with a laser, from working on 3-day-old babies to working on millennials to working on septuagenarians and older. And any procedure where you would use a scalpel, a blade, a scissor, I'm taking out my laser. I haven't used retraction cord in 30 years. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful tool, a wonderful technology under one condition, that one condition being that you're trained to use it. Unfortunately, most people are not trained. They have no idea how to use the device. The training they're getting is rudimentary. And that's why so many dentists have lasers that are just sitting by the sidelines, not being used as well as they should be.
Well, let's assume for this podcast that not everyone has read all 5 of your textbooks, and start educating them. So we know there's diode, there's Nd.YAG, there's erbium, there's CO2. What do you think is when do you go through each of those and tell them what you like and don't like about those?
Okay. Well, diodes, if you remember your interview with Gordon Christensen a while back, Gordon couldn't have said it any better. Diodes, even though they're called lasers, are not used as lasers. Diodes essentially are hot glass tips. Diodes are used in contact, and they need to be initiated. And when you use a laser, a true laser, which is an optical device, lasers are never initiated and lasers never touch tissue. Let's say we're ophthalmologists and I'm doing retinal surgery on your eye. How do I use my laser to do retinal surgery? Do I take the laser? Do I shove it through your eye, to the back of the eye, to the retina and do it? No, of course not. Lasers are non-contact devices. They never touch tissue. Lasers never need to be initiated. The way a laser works is very simple. You push down on the pedal, the beam of photons come out of the laser tip, and they then are absorbed by the chromophores of the contact of the tissue, your target tissue, and you're all set. Anytime you need to initiate something, anytime you need to contact something, you're not using it as a laser anymore. You're using it as a hot glass tip.
And wouldn't you say Alan Miller was the one who really exploded the diode laser because he made it so low cost? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Alan had a brilliant idea to bring laser dentistry to the masses. He had a company in Shanghai build thousands of these devices for him. They were inexpensive pieces of plastic. They were essentially like a 1-speed bicycle rather than a 3-speed or a 10-speed. So they were inexpensive to make. They could do a couple of things, not a lot, but it got people started on the road to using lasers.
Well, Alan's a smart son, and you know how I can prove he might be the smartest man in dentistry?
Yep.
His son goes to ASU, so his you know your dad's smart when he puts you in ASU. So Alan is now what, with Blue Marble Cocktail? Is he in lasers at all anymore?
As far as I know, he's out of lasers. He sold the company and he's no longer involved with it.
Wow. So then the next one up would be the Nd.YAG.
Well, the Nd.YAG is a unit that was devised for ophthalmic surgery for post-cataract patients. And the way the Nd.YAG started in dentistry is kind of interesting. And the way lasers in general dentistry started is kind of interesting. There was an ophthalmologist in Michigan by the name of Bill Myers, and his brother Terry Myers was a dentist. And they took an Nd.YAG, a neodymium YAG laser, modified it for dental use, and started to sell to dentists. And that was the first company that had a product made specifically for general practitioners. That was the D-Lace 300 from American Dental Laser. And that, once again, is one of the seminal moments in laser dentistry that started people thinking about lasers and purchasing lasers. That company now is essentially out of business.
And why do you think it's out of business? I remember when I got out of school, there was an Nd.YAG that was for $50,000. They sold 1,000 of them, and then after 1,000 sales, they went bankrupt. And it's like, you would think after 1,000 sales, I mean, that they would have taken over the world. What do you make of that?
So the same problem that most laser companies are doing these days: over-promoting, over-hyping, underperforming, and most importantly, under-educating. And I'll give you an example of education. Do you place implants?
Yes.
Okay. So how did you place implants? Did you just call up 3i or Nobel or any of the companies and say, hey, I want to place implants tomorrow, just send me a kit, and you got a patient, sat him in the chair and started placing implants? Or did you get a good deal of education before you used it on the first patient?
I signed up for the Mish Institute, flew out to see Carl 7 times for 3 or 4 days, got my fellowship in the Mish Institute and my diplomat in the International Congress of Oral Implantology.
And then you started placing implants, right?
Yeah, and at that time, everyone used a pano. There was a couple of rich cats that had an old CAT scan that they bought on eBay for $100,000. But at that time, everybody who I personally knew and shook hands with before coronavirus had placed 10 to 30,000 implants with a pano.
Right. I mean, that was standard of care in those days. These days, of course, cone beam is standard of care. Let me ask you another question. Do you have a digital impression device?
Yes.
Okay. Did you just purchase it and start scanning immediately, or did you get a couple of hours of training?
A lot of training.
Okay. So when it comes to lasers, anybody can buy a laser, have it delivered to their door, open it up, take it out of the box, and start playing around with it. And that's the problem, because lasers are not plug and play devices. In order to use a laser and use it well and get your return on investment and know how it works from A to Z and know all the procedures it's capable of doing, you need to be educated. And anybody that purchases a laser that doesn't get 3 full days of education, including a full day of in-service in their office, presided over by a dentist, not by some salesperson that gets a commission on the sale, but a dentist coming into the office, training the dentist, training the hygienist, training the front desk on billing procedures, training the staff. If you don't get all of that, then you're really being cheated by the laser company. You need education to use a laser and use it well. And most companies, not all, but most companies have abrogated their responsibility for teaching and for education. And that's where I come in.
And how are lasers right now? You've been at this for a long. I've been reading your post on Dental Town since 2002. Would you say lasers are getting more popular, flat, or contracting?
Every time something new comes out, something different comes out, we get a nice rise in the curve, and then after a while it flattens down. When Convergent Technologies came out with their special hard tissue, soft tissue CO2, which is a unique wavelength, sales increased dramatically, and it's starting to flatten down a little bit. And that happens basically with any new device, any new technique, any new material. You get this initial rise, and then it flattens down a little bit.
So Convergent Dental is the creators of Solea. Mike Cataldo is their CEO. We had him on the show back in episode 184. Are you a big Convergent fan?
Yes and no. The problem with Convergent is the cost. It's a very, very, very expensive unit. And for dentists that accept assignment of insurance, or dentists that have an average patient base, it may be difficult to get that return on investment as quickly as they think. The other problem specific to Convergent, well, it's not really specific to Convergent, it's specific to every company, is that people always look at the purchase price and they think that tells them everything they need to know. And purchase price is useless. Purchase price is a fool's errand. You need to know the operating expense of the Solea, the operating expense of virtually any laser. Even take a diode. A diode can be $5,000, $6,000. A CO2, not Convergent, but a regular hard tissue CO2 can be $30,000. But that $30,000 CO2 is far, far less expensive than a $5,000 or $6,000 diode. And people don't realize that. They don't understand it because they're only looking at purchase price, not at operating expense. The operating expense of diodes with those disposable tips that can be $7, $8, $9 a pop, and they're disposable, one patient only, then you throw it away. After a year and a half, 2 years, you've spent more money in disposable tips than you would if you buy a carbon dioxide laser that has zero operating expense.
That is well put. It's whenever I'm doing a podcast on lasers, it makes me sad because the Star Wars of Dentistry with pediatric dentist Fred S. Margolis from Chicago, he was considered one of the pioneers of bringing lasers to pediatric dentistry. Would you agree with that?
Yes, Fred was a good friend and a colleague. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he was one of the shining lights, not to make a pun, of pediatric laser dentistry, along with Larry Kotlow up in Albany, New York, and a couple of other people. They were some of the first pediatric dentists to use lasers and to promote them and to teach about them.
And do you think that it's going to go back to that? I mean, do you think that with coronavirus, do you think pediatric dentists, I mean, there were already advantages of no shots, no drill. There were already people saying, you know, well, if I numb someone up, I got to let it soak in for 10 minutes, and the laser is slower than a high speed, but you don't have to numb. And by the time I would have let the anesthetic soak in for 10 minutes, I'm ready to go. Do you think that the high-speed handpiece and the Profi tip causing this aerosol, do you think that Fred Margolis and what he was doing in pediatric dentistry is going to make a rebirth?
Not necessarily, because when you use an erbium laser for operative dentistry, you're still getting the aerosol. So it's trading an aerosol from a high-speed handpiece to trading an aerosol from an erbium laser. So I don't see any big difference.
Really? You think the aerosol would be the same as from an erbium laser as it would be from a high-speed handpiece?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you look at aerosols produced by lasers, you're getting all sorts of compounds that are in the aerosol that are potentially infective, potentially carcinogenic. And I want to emphasize the word potentially. We don't know of any dentists or any physicians that have become ill as a result of inhaling aerosol from the use of a laser, but aerosol from a high-speed handpiece, aerosol from a laser is something you've got to be very careful about, especially these days.
Wow, I was not expecting you to say that. So, then next up on the list would be the erbium.
Okay, so erbiums, when they first came out,
and that's what we were talking about, the erbium right there with Convergent, right?
Yes. Erbiums, when they first came out, had FDA clearance for hard tissue only. They were invented, they were designed for hard tissue treatment. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that the manufacturers petitioned the FDA to get soft tissue clearances so they could do soft tissue procedures. But make no mistake, erbiums were invented primarily for hard tissue. It's a good wavelength. In my opinion, it's not a fabulous wavelength. We know that there are better wavelengths than erbium, but they're quite expensive. The CO2 wavelength that Convergent Technologies has is a better wavelength for hard tissue than erbium. There are two manufacturers who I believe will have competitors to the Solea coming out within the next year that will also have excellent devices for cutting hard tissue, far superior to erbiums. And the thing about hard tissue...
What are the names of those two companies?
I can't say at this time. I've signed some non-disclosures.
But because we called ourselves Dentistry Uncensored, you can say anything you want.
You'll pay my legal fees. So let's get back to erbiums for a minute, or even the Solea. One of the big things is anesthesia-free operative dentistry, which isn't always true 100% of the time, especially with the erbiums. The Solea users have a little bit more success with anesthesia-free than the erbiums, but not every erbium user can perform anesthesia-free operative dentistry, and not every operative procedure is amenable to anesthesia-free. And there are alternatives to erbiums that are far less expensive that work just as well. For example, on virtually every deciduous tooth that I treat, whether it's an amalgam or a composite or a pulpotomy, I do virtually 100% of my operative dentistry on deciduous teeth, anesthesia-free, with my high-speed handpiece and my PBM laser. PBM lasers are just fabulous. They're wonderful.
So, CO2, I remember when I got out of school, the first time snoring even became an issue, it was ENTs, and they were taking a carbon dioxide laser and roto-rootering out the back of the soft tissue palate. And CO2s were big in ENT, but they were not as big as the Nd.YAG in dentistry. Do you see that changing moving forward?
Oh, absolutely. CO2 is far more common in dentistry these days than Nd.YAG. We've got a variety of CO2 manufacturers, and we've got some excellent CO2 units out there, and they're very reasonably priced, and they're fabulous. When you take a look at CO2 is essentially the number one unit worldwide for working on mucosa. So when we're talking about oral mucosa, we're talking about laryngeal mucosa, we're talking about what an ENT does, what an oral and maxillofacial surgeon does, what dentists do. CO2 has been for decades the number one wavelength. Take a look at virtually every oral and maxillofacial surgeon out there. Virtually every OMS that has a laser has a CO2. There are practically no surgeons, and there are a few, but essentially very, very few oral and maxillofacial surgeons that have erbiums or have diodes. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority of them have CO2.
And would that be the Photono, named after the light photon?
No, the Photona is an erbium. Photona is a company based in Slovenia. They make very, very nice lasers, but the lasers they make are the Erbium YAGs and the neodymium YAGs. They don't make a CO2 for the United States.
So they're so Photona is an Nd.YAG company?
Nd.YAG and Erbium YAG. Yes, that's the light walker.
Yeah, the light walker. And then the other one is the light scalpel.
The light scalpel is a CO2 made by a small company outside of Seattle, Washington. Once again, it's a good unit. I had one for a number of years. There are some advantages to it. There are some disadvantages to it. It is one of the only lasers, or one of the few lasers out there that doesn't have an aiming beam. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it has a waveguide, which is a disposable part of the unit that needs to be replaced every 2.5 years at the cost of anywhere from $700 to $900. So it's a good unit, but once again, you have to look at operating expense versus purchase price. There are other CO2s that are about the same purchase price, but much, much lower operating costs.
So what are you recommending today? When someone goes to your course, tell us what you're teaching now. You talked about how important education is. Educate them. Go from 0 to 60 in 10 minutes on where you would start with laser dentistry.
Okay. So I believe your family was in the restaurant business, right?
Yeah, Sonic Drive-In. That's where I got my fabulous figure from my eating habits of cheeseburgers and hot dogs.
You learned all your practice management. So dentists are like restaurant owners. Let's say there's a restaurant on the left side of the street and a restaurant on the right side of the street. They both have the same cost for food, same cost for wait staff, same cost for chefs, same cost for alcohol, same cost for everything. The restaurant on the left side of the street has 1 seating a night. The restaurant on the right side of the street has 2 seatings a night. Which restaurant is going to make it and which restaurant is going to go out of business? So when it comes to us, why do we use that analogy of restaurants? What do we have to do? Just like the restaurant has to turn over their chairs, we have to turn over our chairs. We've got to get the patient in, do the work, get the patient out, get the next patient in. If we don't turn over our chairs quickly enough, we'll be like that restaurant that has 1 seating a night, and we won't be successful. So we need a device that, number 1, is going to be fast. Number 2 is going to do as many procedures as possible. And for my money, speaking as somebody who has 30 years of experience with lasers, somebody who has close to a dozen lasers in their office, for my money, the best wavelength is CO2. And that's just not just me talking. Once again, talk to virtually any oral and maxillofacial surgeon, talk to almost any ear, nose, and throat specialist that has a laser. They all have CO2. Oral mucosa, pharyngeal mucosa, laryngeal mucosa, it's all basically the same. And that's what the specialists use. And that's what the GPs should use, in my opinion.
And what brand would that be?
The one that I prefer, and I have a couple of them in my office. I have a couple of different CO2 brands in my office. But the brand that I prefer, that I use on a daily basis to the exclusion of all the others, comes from the largest laser manufacturer in the world. They are number 1 in the world in medicine, in dentistry, in veterinary medicine, in industry. And the name of the company is DECA, D-E-K-A. They're based in Florence, Italy. They have a United States distributor, and they distribute their laser in, I don't know, something like 90 countries, something like that. They're worldwide, and they are the world's largest laser company. So service is there, parts and equipment is there, education is there. They're the real deal. They have everything.
So Deca lasers, how much is it? That's what everyone wants to know.
Once again, you got to talk about purchase price versus operating expense. And I don't sell lasers. I'm not a laser salesman. I don't get a commission from the sale of these devices. I stay as far away from getting money from the laser companies as possible. So I will say that the Deca CO2 is somewhere in the range of $30,000 to $35,000, give or take. But once again, don't just look at the purchase price, look at the operating expense. If we compare the operating expense of that device to other devices, such as the light scalpel that you mentioned, the light scalpel has this wave guide that needs to be replaced at the cost of $700-800. The Deca does not have a wave guide. The Deca has what's called an articulating arm that never needs to be replaced. That will last as long as you have the unit. The Deca also has metal tips, not ceramic tips. Those metal tips are autoclavable. They're not disposable. So you have a purchase price of $30,000 to $35,000. You have an operating expense per patient of zero. And that's really one of the most attractive things about it. The other good thing is that the company that sells it here in the United States has one of the most robust educational programs for lasers that I've ever seen. And I work with them and I help them with their educational programs. And I think they're great.
Right now, the website for Deca Lasers, decalasers.com is not opening up. Do you know?
Right. Go to their distributor in the United States. Their distributor in the USA is a company called Diamond Dental. So if you Google diamonddentalsupply.com, Diamond is the exclusive, I believe they're the exclusive Deca distributor in the United States. And Diamond is not, they're not a regular dental supply company like Shine or Patterson. They don't sell cotton rolls. They don't sell saliva ejectors. They sell only high-tech devices. They sell what they believe, and I believe, are the best of the best. They sell the best cone beam, the best laser, the best oral cancer detection device, the best piezoelectric device. So they sell the best of everything.
And how long have they been the exclusive distributor of this?
They've been around for a couple of years. The gentleman who is in charge of Diamond was responsible for helping to bring the Deca laser into the United States more than a decade ago. His uncle had the first franchise to bring it into the United States. Unfortunately, his uncle passed away. The Deca name kind of went in the toilet for a few years. And now that Diamond has the franchise to sell it here in the U.S., they're resurrecting the name. But
are you talking about, is Scott Parker the guy?
I'm sorry?
Scott Parker? Is he the CEO of the place, the dentist, Scott Parker?
No, not Scott Parker. A gentleman by the name of Justin Mangelsdorf is in charge.
How do you spell that? Justin.
Justin, Justen, Mangelsdorf, Mangelsdorf.
Huh? And he's running this now. How's that going?
It's going like gangbusters. It's going very, very well. They're doing extremely well selling these devices because they sell them with the education that everybody needs to use it and to use it correctly.
And is that what you would recommend right now? Is that your recommendation?
That's what I would buy. That's what I would use. And once again, the $30,000 to $35,000 with an operating expense of zero is just a wonderful, wonderful way to go. But the most important thing, once again, I could give you the best laser in the world and no education, and it'll be useless. So you need to have the education, and Diamond Dental is very, very much attuned to this and educates every one of their users. They have special courses for hygienists. They have special courses for the office staff. They have special courses for general dentists and specialists. They do a great job.
And but it seems like if I look at Dental Town, which I'm doing now, and I look at all the interest level and what is everybody asking about, it seems to always be LANAP, Millennium Dental Technologies, and I really want you to weigh in heavily on this because it's such a large purchase. Like the DECA you were saying was $30,000, the Millennium Dental Technology, that's $130,000.
Right.
So
what is it about LANAP? Well, if you take a look at the literature, if you take a look at the American Dental Association Clinical Practice Guidelines, which were published in July 2015, if you take a look at the American Academy of Periodontology Clinical Practice Guidelines, if you take a look at the American Academy of Periodontology Best Evidence Reviews and Consensus that they've been publishing for the past couple of years, they all basically say that the Nd.YAG is not the be-all and end-all of laser dentistry. Now, we can get into a whole discussion about LANAP, that LANAP is a specific technique and a specific procedure and a specific protocol, and that's true. But once again, the only way you're going to get results is if you get a good education. And their educational programs come with the laser. But if you bring on another staff and you want them to go through the educational program, their educational program is rather expensive.
So is that a unconditional vote against it? You would not recommend that?
No. It's not a vote against it. The Nd.YAG wavelength is a good wavelength, but once again, you can't use this on everybody. People think that lasers are magic wands, and they're not magic wands at all. You have three types of patients. Patients come into your office, and their perio is poor, and you do your 4 quadrants of scaling and root planing, and then you look at them, you evaluate them, you have them in 2 weeks later to see what the next step will be. 1/3 of the patients, you will have scared them straight, and the home care will be great, in which case you can go on doing LANAP or perio pocket reduction with CO2. The second possibility is that home care is only so-so, not great, but not terrible. And the third possibility is that their home care is just god-awful. And if you take a laser and put it in the pockets of a patient whose home care is god-awful, you're not going to succeed. So to think that LANAP is a magic wand or any laser device is a magic wand and you're going to go in and cure periodontal disease in anybody is just a fallacy. It will not work as well in diabetic patients. It will not work as well in patients that are heavy smokers. It will not work as well in patients that are immune compromised. So it's not a panacea. And as far as LANAP, LANAP is an acronym. The acronym stands for Laser Assisted New Attachment Procedure. That acronym can only be advertised by Millennium because they have taken out a copyright on that acronym. However, the procedure is Laser Assisted New Attachment Procedure. And there are other devices that are FDA cleared for Laser Assisted New Attachment Procedure, such as CO2 devices, carbon dioxide lasers.
And for a significant fraction of the cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
That may not make the Millennium people happy, but once again, you're talking about an acronym, LANAP, versus a procedure, the procedure being Laser Assisted New Attachment Procedure, where, according to the information that I have, CO2 lasers, some CO2 lasers are FDA cleared for that. And once again, you're not going to get results unless you're trained.
You know, where do you see the demand for laser dentistry the most? Some people swear that laser is not light amplification, stimulation, emission, or radiation. It's losing all savings equals reality, and you don't need it. You can use a 15 blade. Other people see it as a marketing that, my gosh, if you're the laser dentist, that's your unique selling proposition. Some people, where I hear the most sincere interest in it, where they really need it, is Peri-Implantitis. Where do you see it as far as do you need it, marketing, peri-implantitis? In fact, LANAP is even has new protocols now for peri-implantitis.
They have looked at laser-assisted peri-implantitis protocols. Absolutely.
So where do you weigh in on this? I mean, let's go with peri-implantitis. I mean, my friends that have diplomats in the International Congress of Oral Implantology, they're really interested. Like, is this going to be their cure-all for peri-implantitis?
Okay. There is no cure-all for peri-implantitis, period. If there was, we'd all be doing it. We'd all know what to do and how to do it. There are plenty of different reasons for peri-implantitis. If you listen to the oral surgeons, it's because we general practitioners leave too much cement there around the margins, and that causes it. If you listen to the prosthodontists, it's because we don't know how to do a good occlusal scheme, and there are occlusal prematurities on the implants, and the implants are overloaded. So there are plenty of reasons for peri-implantitis. And if you have a poor occlusal scheme on that implant, no laser is going to fix that up. But the thing about lasers is that you can't fudge the physics. You can't talk about things that just are blatantly not true. Now, if you remember from your high school or college physics, we have the electromagnetic spectrum. We have the ultraviolet, and then the visible, and then the infrared. The ultraviolet part of the spectrum is very, very short wavelengths and carcinogenic. Things like gamma rays out in space, things like X-rays. And then as the wavelength gets longer, we're in the visible part of the spectrum, the part that we can see, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And past the visible, we then go into the infrared part of the spectrum. That's non-ionizing, non-carcinogenic, longer wavelengths. Now, when I'm coming to your office tomorrow morning for my appointment, you're going to take a full set of X-rays on me. You're going to put a lead shield on me. Why do you do that? The answer is simple. Lead absorbs the X-rays so it doesn't get into my body. So there's a relationship between wavelength and absorption in metal. X-rays, high absorption in metal. Visible part of the spectrum, moderate absorption in metal. Longer wavelength, less absorption in metal. By the time you get to CO2 at 10,600 nanometers, a very, very, very long wavelength, absorption in metal by the CO2 wavelength is essentially zero. So I can take my CO2 laser, flap open an implant that's filled with peri-implantitis tissue, with diseased tissue, with granulomatous tissue. I can zap that granulomatous tissue with my CO2 laser. It'll vaporize it. It'll, quote, sterilize, disinfect, decontaminate, whatever word you want to use, give me a pristine implant. And the CO2 laser will have zero effect whatsoever on the implant, because as soon as the CO2 laser energy hits the implant, it is reflected right off of it. And that's just physics. That's just science. You can't make this stuff up. So when it comes to peri-implantitis, peri-mucositis, there are plenty of papers out there that say CO2 is wonderful. There's a researcher by the name of Deppe, D-E-P-P-E, and he's written a whole bunch of papers on the use of lasers for peri-implantitis and peri-mucositis, and touting the ability of CO2 lasers specifically to treat peri-implantitis and peri-mucositis. But once again, the only way that's going to happen is if you get the proper training. You can't just buy a laser, take it out of the box, and start wailing away at implants and think you're going to cure it.
Now, I'm going to ask you for stock tips. Since you're the laser experts, BioLase has gone down from $2.49 a share to 37 cents a share. Is that a buy for you?
I don't think so. I try not to purchase any stocks of any companies where I might talk about their products or devices. But BioLase makes pretty good devices. But over the years, they've had management problems. I don't know how many CEOs and CFOs they've had over the years, but they have a constant turnover in their executive suite, and that's been a problem.
Do you think it's a problem because it's kind of like a really high-priced executive who's really smart and he's got a great bunch of degrees from Harvard and all that, but he's just too expensive? I mean, he's just not the lowest cost, most efficient person for the job?
Beats me. That's something that's above my pay grade to answer.
So do you recommend the BioLace at all?
Depends on what you want to use it for. BioLace makes an erbium. They make an erbium chromium YSGG. That's primarily for hard tissue and some soft tissue procedures. And they make diodes. But once again, diodes are simply hot glass tips. And the tip temperature of an average diode, according to the literature, according to the peer-reviewed literature, not according to me, according to the science, according to the peer-reviewed literature, the average tip temperature of a diode is 750 to 1200 degrees. Now, if I'm using a CO2, a carbon dioxide laser, carbon dioxide lasers are absorbed by water, the water in the oral mucosa. Oral mucosa is 70% plus water. So if I have a CO2 laser, the way I work that laser is I need to get the temperature of my target tissue up to 100 degrees Celsius, boiling point of water. So if I'm working on a 3-day-old baby, which I do every day to release their tongue tie, I can do it with a device that works at 750 to 1200 degrees, according to the literature, or I can do it at a device that just boils away the water at 100 degrees Celsius. So what am I going to use? I'm going to use the 100 degrees Celsius device. So diodes have a place in dentistry, but I'm not sure their place in dentistry is as ubiquitous as the laser companies are trying to tell us.
Okay, and let's go through some more of those. On Dental Town, there's a lot of talk now. When we were young, you just had a baby and you nursed it. Well, now they have these nursing coaches that come into newborn mothers, and they give them training on how to nurse their newborn baby. And I don't really know the training of these people, but it does stimulate a lot of people to call the office and say, this is a concern. I'm lucky I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. So, we got Jeanette up the street, a pediatric dentist who's been on the cover of the New York Times. What is your thoughts on this increased demand by nursing lactating coaches that your child needs tongue-tied correction?
So let's go historically. Cutting tongue ties is something that goes back millennia. It goes back to ancient Greek medicine thousands of years ago. There are references to cutting tongue ties. Take a look at the Old Testament. Moses was not the high priest of the Israelites. His brother Aaron was. Why? Because it says in the Old Testament that Moses was slow of speech. Well, maybe Moses was tongue-tied. I don't know. There are also some references in the New Testament as well. If you go to any good art museum and you take a look at paintings of women giving birth from the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages, you'll see the midwife with a very, very long index finger, and that's how they used to cut tongue ties. So cutting tongue ties has been around forever. Why is it such a big deal now? Well, there was no such thing as formula before World War I. Women nursed their babies, and that was it. World War I came, World War II came. We needed women in the workforce. The pharmaceutical industry came up with this magic baby formula. They promoted it as science, as better than mother's milk, which of course is not true. And people forgot about nursing. They forgot all that education about nursing, and people went to formula. And now we're going back to nursing. Now, you mentioned lactation consultants. So there are 3 types of lactation consultants. There's an LC, a lactation consultant. That's just somebody that took a weekend course that knows a little bit. And then there's a certified lactation consultant that knows a little bit more, has more education. And then there's an IBCLC, International Board of Certified Lactation Consultants. This is a 2-year program with, I believe it's 1,000 hours of being mentored by an IBCLC, and they know a ton about lactation, about nursing, about all that stuff. And if you work with a good lactation consultant, they will send you patients that need their tongue ties released. But it's not a simple tongue tie release. There's so many things that could go wrong. Is it just a tongue tie? Is it just a maxillary lip tie? Is it a mandibular lip tie? Is it a buccinator tie? Is it unilateral buccinator? Is it bilateral buccinator? There's a whole lot of information about that. That's why I give 2-day courses on this where we go over everything from A to Z. It's myself and a lactation consultant. And we have dentists, we have physicians come to the course. We've got chiropractors come to the course as well. We've got speech therapists come to the course. And by the time you walk out of these courses, you know everything there is to know about tongue tie release, and you know how to do it, when to do it, and when not to do it.
Now, when you do these courses, are they is the Diamond Dental Supply $30,000 CO2 laser? Is that part of the course and training?
At all of my courses, I have 3 wavelengths. I don't want to promote one specific device over another. Yes, I have my likes, and yes, I have my dislikes, but at all of my courses, I make certain that we have a CO2, we have a diode, and we have an erbium. Because not everybody that already has an erbium that they spent $50,000, $60,000 for is going to want to spend another $30,000, $35,000 for a CO2. So my job isn't to sell lasers. My job is to teach you whatever laser you have to do the best job you can with what you have. If you decide to buy a CO2, well, that's fine too. But you're going to be trained on a CO2, you're going to be trained on an erbium, you're going to be trained on a diode, and at the end of the course, you can take a 75-question online test and get certification in tongue tie and lip tie release by the American Board of Laser Surgery. Now, the ABLS, the American Board of Laser Surgery, is a nonprofit organization that takes $0 from any laser company. They do not permit laser companies to be on their board. They have nothing to do with laser companies whatsoever. They are nothing more than a certification board, and they are the most prominent, most well-respected certification board for plastic surgeons, dermatologists, other physicians, as well as dentists and veterinarians that use lasers in their practice. So you take a course, you get certification from the ABLS, and I can pretty much guarantee you're going to know what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, and how to follow up, and how to grow that practice exponentially. Because once you get 1 or 2 or 3 lactation consultants that realize you know what to do and how to do it, you'll be so busy doing tongue tie releases, you won't have time to do anything else.
So you're talking about the their website, laserdentistry.org?
No, that's the Academy of Laser Dentistry. That's an organization that is supported by the laser industry.
Okay.
Well.
What site were you talking about then?
American Board of Laser Surgery, www.americanboardoflasersurgery.com. .org.
American Board
of Laser Surgery.
Of Laser Surgery. Now, it didn't say dental. Is that all dental or?
It's medical and dental. It's plastic surgeons, dermatologists, veterinarians, and dentists.
Okay, so I'm okay, best laser treatment, cosmetic laser equipment, medical lasers for cell, American laser treatment, laser cataract surgery, American laser vision.
There should be a dental icon there somewhere about their dental programs.
Let me see. American Board of Laser Surgery. The American Board of Laser Surgery. Okay, so it says it has a trial exam. Is that what you're talking about? The first
trial exam, because they have different examinations, but they have a dental examination, and they have diplomate status in the board. And the wonderful thing about the ABLS, once again, is that they take no money whatsoever from any laser company. They're independent of the laser companies. The Academy of Laser Dentistry that you just had up a minute or two ago, laserdentistry.org, they're supported by the industry. And sometimes that can skew how they teach things. And the gentleman who for many years was the chair of the education committee of the Academy of Laser Dentistry was also the vice president of clinical affairs for a laser company, which is kind of a big conflict of interest in my mind. So the ABLS, the American Board of Laser Surgery, has nothing to do with any with any manufacturers.
How sharp do you think the young kids are? I mean, I don't know if you and I, since we're older, are a little more cynical and our bullshit alarm goes off. But I mean, in my 30 years, I mean, I had mentors when I was young, and then all of a sudden they switched their entire protocol from one composite company of Ivoclar to another one, and you realize, I've always said that when dentists lecture, they should wear a NASCAR suit with patches on. Who paid for this? Do you think the kids realize how? Well, what percent of the lectures? Like we just had the Chicago Midwinter meeting. What percent of the lectures do you think were sponsored by manufacturers?
Beats me. Couldn't tell you. But the most important thing is the first slide that anybody must underline the word must show at any lecture is a disclosure. You need a disclosure from the speaker. This course is being paid for by an educational grant by this company or that company or whatever. It is horribly unethical for a speaker to get up in front of an audience and not disclose who's putting the money in his pocket. And I have a very, very specific disclosure that I give at every single one of my courses so that everybody knows where I'm getting paid, who's paying me, where I'm getting my money from, and on and on and on. So your idea of a NASCAR type with all the sponsors on it, that's not a bad idea, but ethically, it's the obligation of the speaker at the podium to disclose that before he starts the lecture. And if they don't, that's pretty sad.
But is it common though?
Oh, very common. Very, very common. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, like how common? How common would you say? If the young kid got out of dental school, she's 25 and she went to 100 lectures, what percent of them would you say were presenting financially biased information?
I'll stick my neck out and I'll say 75%,
Yeah.
80%.
Yeah. So it is absolutely buyer beware. But you're saying that Dr. Edward M. Zimmerman, the president and MD, president of the American Board of Laser Surgery out of Connecticut, that they're not like that. You think this is the real deal?
Without question. They take no money whatsoever from any laser companies, period. Not one penny from laser companies.
And what a lot of people are asking, where would you go? You know, due to the pandemic, all my lectures were canceled. God, I was supposed to be in Italy May 1st, and I just talked to my buddy Tiziano, and he said, "Man, it's just a war zone." In fact, I should read what he just said, because I think a lot of it's going to go to online dentistry. He wrote this. He wrote this morning. He called it, "The famous black swan finally arrived. This situation can be defined as a true black swan that is an unpredictable reality that distorts everything." Nassim Taleb, creator of this theory, interviewed on March 5 on this aspect, said that it is not a black swan because there is no unpredictability. Maybe if they interviewed him today, he would change his mind because the spread of the virus was really unpredictable. This period has indeed changed reality from one day to the other. In December, who could imagine it? There were those who had imagined it, but certainly it was something that leaves us unprepared and puts us in front of many big questions. How long will it take? How much will it cost? Will I survive? For the surviving, just staying at home or ordering as much online as possible can be annoying. On the other hand, the other two questions are not easy to answer. Based on what we have been able to observe and more or less obvious data, we can make some hypotheses and predictions. How long will it last and cost? At the beginning of March, they were considering a short duration, which has gradually increased. Now they talked about April 5, but this date could be moved to Easter. We have to ask ourselves two questions. How long can we last without working, and how can we recover the losses? For the first question, we have to analyze two costs. First, personal costs, professional costs. It's a great piece that goes on forever, but the bottom line, and thank you, Dr. Tiziano Caprera. He's had me out to Italy to speak, and he's a huge leader in the Italian dental market. But they're already asking on Dental Town how... switching to online, and it says what is it? What do they say? What online? 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 courses would you recommend to learn diode or to learn laser?
Lasers? Offhand, I'm not aware of any good online courses that are manufacturer independent. However, I will make you an offer. Since I've been sitting at home doing not a whole heck of a lot, and I've been lecturing for over 30 years, and I have over a dozen different courses, I have converted about 7 or 8 of my courses from live participation courses to 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour webinars. So I'm ready to go. I guess I need to speak to some of your people, and we can have some laser dentistry webinar courses up and running within 24 hours with tests at the end for CE credit, and however you want to do it. I'm ready to go. Just say the word.
Well, then let's do it, because so I was talking to, I've been trying to podcast interview people who do business around the world. Like we had Stan Bergman on. I think he's the largest publicly traded company in dentistry. He has manufacturing all around the world. Dan Fisher, Ultradent, lots of people like that. And they're saying that Wuhan, Stan Bergman is saying Wuhan is just now coming alive again, and they're coming back to work at the office. And this is March 23rd. So Italy, it seems like it's really bad now, but that might be because, like Wuhan, it's at the peak of the curve, and they're all hoping that in the next 10 or 14 days, hopefully Italy will be trending down, showing the same curve as Wuhan, but then the United States would be ramping up. But do you think this is going to be like Wuhan? Do you think it's going to be about a 2-month lockdown, quarantine?
Wuhan hasn't been 2 months. It really started there in December. And now we're talking about March. The first cases in Wuhan were back in December.
But when did they do the quarantine?
4 months.
But when was the quarantine, though?
Yeah, that I don't know. Probably sometime in January. They might have started to quarantine in December without telling anybody in the West about what they were doing, because they're rather secretive about their things.
Yeah, because it seems like when they allowed the Chinese New Year to go, and when people are saying Americans weren't talking about December, I mean, look, okay, first of all, I'm an American, and gosh darn, Christmas to New Year's is the biggest holiday in America. I mean, it just shuts down. No one's watching the news and about something in China, and even China let their Chinese New Year go on. I mean, people are people, and that's their big time. But I think the Wuhan didn't really start quarantine intense till February 21st, and this is just March 23rd. So, and like say, what's that?
You're making me feel very optimistic.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do on this show. I'm trying to get real information. Stan Bergman came on, and he operates around the world, and he says they're coming back to work now in Wuhan. And like say, we had our Christmas. Of course, we weren't thinking about virus in China over Christmas, and the Chinese, I don't think they politically could tell everybody to stay home for the Chinese New Year. What date is the Chinese New Year?
Middle of January?
Yeah, exactly. So the Chinese New Year was January 25th, and it still took place in China. And then the Wuhan lockdown, from what I can figure out, was right after that. So January 25th was the Chinese New Year, and it took till February 21st to bring a huge quarantine. So I don't know. Do you think it's going to be a month, or do you think it's going to be 2 months, or what are you thinking based on what we just talked about?
I'm hoping on 2 months, not much more than that.
Yeah. Boy, these are just unprecedented times, aren't they?
Yeah. Never thought I'd see anything like this in my lifetime.
We've both had all of our lectures canceled. So you ready to go online? You want to make some courses with Howard Goldstein?
Absolutely. I had some preliminary discussions with him. Unfortunately, I got busy starting to work on another edition of my textbook, and things didn't work out as well. But when we are finished with this, I'm going to send Howard an email, and I'm going to tell him we are ready to go. I've got, like I said, about a half a dozen different laser courses up and running, and I'm ready to deliver them to you and to the whole dental town community.
Well, let's do it. And so for that course, what would you be trying to say? I can't believe we went over an hour, but what would you be trying to? What would be your bottom line recommendation? She's let's say she's 30 years old. She just opened up her office in Middletown Market, America. What's a laser going to do for her? What would you be recommending?
What's the laser going to do for her? Number one, it's going to save her time on many, many, many procedures. And like we said about turning over that chair, time saving is critical. Number two, it's going to allow her to perform a boatload of procedures that she would otherwise send out. One of the things that I learned from you many, many years ago was about opening up your front door and closing the back door. You want to get the patients in, and you don't want them to leave. And one of the ways patients leave is they go to the specialist, and sometimes they don't come back. And there are so many things that a 30-year-old just opening up her practice in anywhere USA can do with a laser. It's a whole bunch of procedures, such as simple biopsies and things like that, that she can keep in-house and not have to refer out to the specialist. Keep more money in her pocket.
And any other? We went over our hour. Any other things you wanted to talk about that you thought maybe I would cover, but I wasn't? We didn't talk about?
Well, we can talk about using lasers for biopsy techniques, which once again I have a 1.5 to 2 day course on biopsy techniques, using a laser and using other techniques as well. We can talk about using lasers in Peri-Implantitis. I've got a course on that. I've got a course on using lasers for increasing the bone level in periodontal patients, periodontal regeneration courses. I've got a whole slew of them.
And my gosh, this could go on and on, but
I've got nothing better to do. New York is closed down, so let's just.
So what does that mean? I mean, can you go to the grocery store? Can you are you allowed to drive your car? Can you walk? Or are you?
You have to go outside. You have to keep 6 feet away. You can walk the dog, stay 6 feet away. You can go for groceries. Everybody in the grocery store is wearing masks. You can go gas up your car. Pharmacies are open. A few other types of stores are open, but otherwise, that's it. Hair salons, nail salons, most shopping malls, they're all just closed and locked down.
And what % reduction of street traffic are you seeing right now when you look out your window?
Oh, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. It reminds me of the hours and days after 9/11 when nobody ventured out for any reason whatsoever.
And when
had a finite ending, we knew in a couple of days things would be okay. This, we don't know what that end date is.
And what can you tell the young kids about the 9/11? Because I was talking about that on Dental Town. In fact, let me pull it up. It was 5 years ago this March when here, let me pull it up. When my favorite dental economist in the world, Nd.YAG, here, I just had it. Marco Wukacek, who's the ADA chief economist, he wrote a great article, one of the best ones. It said, here, where is it? There it is. Marco Wukacek, PhD, chief economist and vice president of the ADA Health Policy Institute, wrote of lawyers, lattes, and dentists showing post-recession household spending contracting for dentistry. So when the rest of the world after the 9/11 and it was coming up, that's not what dentistry turned out to be as discretionary as lawyers and lattes at Starbucks, and we were really behind the growth curve, rebounding from that. How do you remember that on the post recession after 2007 to 2009, after Lehman's Day?
Katrina that we had in New Orleans, and we had Superstorm Sandy that we had here in New York City. So there have been a whole bunch of natural and man-made disasters. Dentistry always bounces back, which is a good thing. people will always have toothaches. People will always have infections. People will always have problems that need to be addressed. We're probably not going to be doing as many laminates in the coming months as we have in the past. We're probably not going to be doing as much cosmetic work, but we'll be doing a lot of important stuff. So don't look so dejected. Things are going to bounce back. We're going to be busy. We're going to be successful. You just have to tread water for the next couple of weeks or so, and we'll be all right.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much for, I don't want to say taking your time because you're homebound quarantined. How many pets do you have?
How many pets?
Yeah.
One little doggy.
One little dog. So the worst case scenario, you just have a small meal to last you for a day. See, I have 4 dogs, and we've already lined them up, which ones we'll eat in order. But hope it doesn't get to that. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, and thank you for all you do for laser dentistry. I can't think of anybody who's been leading laser dentistry more than you. Oh, that was my final question. Out of all your textbooks, you have 5 textbooks. If someone wanted to read a textbook, which is always what I recommend the most. I remember we talked about early in the show when I learned implants when I went to Carl Misch's. Well, the first thing I did before I signed up for his course, I bought his $100 book and read that, and I was so blown away how even 7 3-day weekends, you couldn't cover everything that was in a textbook. And then all the questions that people were asking during class, I was like, are you kidding me? That was like covered in the first chapter of his book. Why did you get on an airplane and fly all the way here and stay in a hotel and not see patients and all that stuff to ask a question that you could have learned in 1 hour of reading chapter 1? So which laser book would you recommend?
The #1 textbook worldwide for laser dentistry is Principles and Practice of Laser Dentistry, 2nd edition. And you can get it from Elsevier. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from just about anywhere. It's available in English, Spanish, Portuguese. Russian translation just came out, by the way, so I'm really thrilled about that. And it's been the #1 selling textbook for a full decade now.
Wow. Congratulations to that. That is amazing.
And if anybody wants any more information about lasers or laser dentistry, by all means, they can email me. My email is so stupid, you'll never forget it. I use a laser. My name is Bob, and I'm a DDS. So my email address is laserbobdds@gmail. And they can go on to fullspectrumseminars.com, and they can take a look at all of my courses. We've got a full roster of courses. Of course, most of them have been canceled, but we'll have them all rescheduled, and people can find tongue-tie courses and biopsy courses and 2-day certification courses at fullspectrumseminars.com. And we'll educate everybody, which is the #1 purpose of what both of us do.
So do you still take emails from old friends like me? Because my email for you, it goes back to laserbobdds@msn.com.
Yeah, I changed it from MSN to Gmail.
But does the MSN still work?
Probably not. Probably not.
Oh, my God. When a dentist sends me an email and it's at AOL.com, I go, dude, you can't have this on your website. Who would want surgery by someone with an AOL.com email? You'd probably think that's what my mom used. But, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. Stay safe, stay isolated, and be well.
Thanks for everything. And I'll get in touch with Mr. Goldstein in the next couple of minutes. We'll see what we can do.
All right, buddy. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Stay safe.